So for this deep dive, we're going to be digging through this collection of February Dynaxioms. There are these little snapshots of thoughts and observations collected over time. And think of it like we're trying to decode the map of this constantly evolving digital world that we're all living in.
Hmm.
And by looking back at these moments captured in time, we can hopefully get a clearer sense of what's happening right now in March 2025, and maybe even anticipate where things are headed in terms of how we find information and connect with culture.
Yeah, if you connect it to a bigger idea, it's like using these past observations as data points, right?
Yeah.
Each entry on its own is interesting. But when you see them all together, you start to see these patterns emerge, like these underlying currents of technological and societal change.
Right.
And it all affects you, the listener, in really tangible ways.
Absolutely. So let's jump into one of the earlier entries, February 2001. So a completely different era of the internet, really.
Yeah.
And there's this entry number, 0090. It says, new word, internet. A smaller, partitioned internet. It almost feels like something out of a sci-fi movie now, like this idea of a segmented, less interconnected web.
What's striking is how things actually went the opposite direction,
Yeah.
right? That initial concept, maybe driven by concerns about control or just the sheer scale of what the internet could become, it didn't really play out that way. Instead
Oh.
of these separate internets, we have this massive interconnected network. But what's interesting is how different forms of digital borders and content restrictions are kind of popping up today.
Yeah.
It might not be the partitioned internet from 2001, but it raises some questions about global access versus these localized digital spaces. And that could really impact what you see and do online.
Absolutely. So that brings us to how we even think about the internet. Fast forward to February 2017, entry 1333. The metaphor for the web has changed since its inception a generation ago. The web was really an extension of a newspaper. Now it's an extension of TV. At some point, the net itself will be an extension of something else. Kind of mind-blowing to think about that evolution.
And it raises a huge question for us in 2025. What is that something else, right? You can't ignore how fast AI is advancing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how it's already a part of search engines, content recommendation systems, and even creating media itself.
Right.
Yuval Noah Harari, he talks about AI's impact on information and storytelling. It's not hard to imagine that the internet is becoming an extension of these intelligent systems shaping what you see and experience online.
There's this idea in that same entry that really clicks for me. It says that once a technology or medium reaches a certain point, it doesn't stop. It becomes the parent of something new. So it makes you think that AI isn't just another app or tool on the internet. It could be the thing that the internet evolves into.
Yep.
Exactly. And that connects to another observation from February 2017, entry 1335. You can't understand the future until you understand the technologies that haven't been invented yet. The only thing that you can understand are the conditions that would arise that could make those technologies possible.
Right.
But there's a note added for March 2025, kind of a twist. With AI, now we're understanding the near future by looking at what AI can already do and projecting its likely advancements in the short term.
Oh, wow.
It's less about imagining completely new, unknown technologies and more about extrapolating from something that's unfolding right now.
I see.
It's kind of like how musicians, they might initially imitate their heroes, but then develop their own unique style based on their skills and how the music landscape is changing.
Yeah, so it's a fundamental shift in how we think about the future, right?
Yeah.
Instead of pure speculation, we're seeing this exponential curve with AI, and near-term predictions feel a lot more grounded in what's happening now.
What's fascinating is how this rapid evolution of a known technology, AI, is shaping our understanding of the internet's future.
Right. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about media and art in this evolving digital world.
Yeah.
Back in February 2015, entry 0883, there's this statement that feels almost prophetic. The simulacrum of music is now the musical reality. The note reminds us that 10 years ago, AI-driven music creation was pretty much science fiction. But this idea of a created or simulated version becoming a dominant form of music still feels incredibly relevant in 2025.
It really highlights how technology changes our perception of art. Simulacrum basically means a copy that becomes so widespread it's seen as the original or the reality.
Right.
Think about music that's heavily produced with digital enhancements and auto-tune. For a lot of people, that polished sound is the norm, even if it's far from a live, unedited performance.
Yeah.
And the fact that digitally created music is so easy to access and share just amplifies this effect, and now AI is taking it to a whole new level with personalized and even infinite streams of generated music.
And it's not just music. There's this idea from February 2016, entry 1066, this geologic metaphor.
It talks about how finished works can evolve into other mediums, such that What was once a painting is now a digital work, and the original's painted over, then photographed, and so on. It's like layers of artistic creation and reinterpretation. Think about a famous painting that gets endlessly digitized, remixed in video form, becomes part of an NFT.
Right.
The original still exists, but its influence and form keep multiplying.
Yeah, it speaks to how fluid digital media is. The traditional idea of a fixed original artwork, it becomes really blurry in this context. Works are constantly being adapted, remixed, and shared across platforms, which leads to new forms of creative expression.
Right.
It challenges traditional ideas about ownership and authenticity, and it means your experience of a particular artwork might be totally different from someone else's, depending on the version or context.
Yeah, building on that idea of transformation in February 2022, in 2642 says, playing with media has become a new artistic medium. It's almost like the next logical step from that geologic metaphor, isn't it? The act of manipulating, combining, and transforming existing media becomes an art form in itself. But then there's this tension that comes up in February 2023, entry 2794. The internet made it too easy to be an artist, then too hard.
Right.
The note mentions Warhol and suggests he might have been okay with how easy it is to create online, but there's a real paradox here.
It gets at the challenge of getting noticed in a world that's so saturated with creative content.
Right.
When it's so easy to create and share art, the sheer volume of content makes it really hard for serious artists to gain any traction and for their work to be valued and discovered by audiences like you. While making creation easy might democratize participation, it can also devalue artistic effort and expertise in a world where everyone's a potential creator.
It really makes you think, how does quality and meaningful artistic expression cut through all the noise?
Exactly.
So let's think about intentions and purpose in this digital age. February 2019 entry 1660 says, the internet should make everyone suspicious of their intentions.
Okay.
The note contrasts this with pre-internet TV, where creating content was a lot harder and felt more distant. Now that anyone can easily share their thoughts and creations online, the question of why becomes really important.
What's fascinating is the focus on self-awareness, because it's so easy to share and amplify information online.
Mm.
You have to scrutinize your motivations. Are you sharing to inform, to connect, or for other less transparent reasons?
Yeah.
The entry talks about the undefined purpose of new media. Older media had gatekeepers and intended uses. The internet, being more open and decentralized, lacked those things, which contributed to some of the unintended consequences, like all the challenges around misinformation.
And the note for March 2025 adds this perspective. New technologies are predictable within the limits of what we understand about human behavior, both the good and the bad.
Right.
So while the tools themselves might be new, the motivations and the potential for both creation and less constructive activities remain the same. AI offers incredible possibilities, but it also reflects existing human tendencies.
It emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and media literacy for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Understanding the potential for manipulation and the different intentions behind online content is crucial for navigating the digital world responsibly.
Okay, so let's talk about how we relate to culture relevance and the past in this rapidly changing world. February 2019 entry 1662 suggests that early adult life, roughly ages 20 to 40, provides the primary cultural relevance for a generation. It lays out these periods for different generations, noting that we're currently in the period where Gen Y's formative experiences, the 2010s and 2020s, hold the most cultural weight.
This framework helps us understand why certain cultural touchstones resonate so strongly with specific age groups. Shared experiences during those formative years shape a generation's identity and how it contributes to the broader cultural conversation.
Right.
The entry suggests that by 2070, the cultural touchstones of the 2010s might seem quite distant and less important.
Oh, wow.
It shows how fleeting cultural trends and references really are.
Which connects to this idea of how we reconstruct and reinterpret the past.
Yeah.
The entry uses Shakespeare as an example. His popularity declined at one point because society's values didn't align with his work. It emphasizes that cultural relevance isn't fixed. It's a product of a society's values at a specific time.
Exactly. This underscores the importance of ongoing research and engagement with the past. To really understand historical art, literature, or events, we need to understand them in their original context, not just through our present-day lens.
Right.
Otherwise, we risk misinterpreting or missing valuable insights.
Okay, let's touch on some societal and political observations. February 2020 entry 1956 states, tribal boundaries are not removed by political boundaries redefined under democratic ideals. It uses the example of the Middle East, where post-World War II borders often ignored much older tribal affiliations.
The key takeaway is that while democratic systems aim for unity based on shared political values, they don't automatically erase deep-rooted social and cultural structures like tribal or ethnic identities.
Right.
These pre-existing affiliations can be really influential, sometimes leading to tensions and complexities within newly formed political entities.
Yeah.
It highlights the fact that democratic ideals and existing social realities don't always mesh perfectly.
Then there's this observation from February 2021, entry 2382. Private companies aren't designed to respond to systemic emergencies. That's what governments are for. But if you starve off government, then no one can respond to emergencies except for a fee. It raises a really important point about the roles of the public and private sectors during large-scale crises.
It points to the limitations of relying only on market-driven solutions for societal challenges that affect everyone. Systemic emergencies often need a coordinated response that goes beyond making a profit, and that's where government is essential.
Right.
Undermining that capacity can leave society vulnerable during a crisis.
And finally, this may be a bit cynical but insightful point from February 2003, entry 2469.
Yeah.
The homeopathic approach to motivation, basically making people believe you're doing something to motivate them.
Okay.
The note connects this to the discussions around the Iraq War and also mentions how information often comes out through leaked text messages now, which is very different from how public discourse worked back then.
It's interesting how there's this timeless human desire to influence others, sometimes through subtle or even illusory actions.
Yeah.
The shift towards leaked information as a major source also reflects how power dynamics and information sharing have changed, moving from controlled public narratives to more fragmented and potentially less transparent channels.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, a few key things really stand out. This seemingly infinite internet still has its hidden corners, and even digital items can become relics of the past. The very definition of the internet and how we interact with it is constantly changing, with AI possibly taking center stage. And while the internet has made artistic creation more accessible, it's also created new challenges for artists seeking recognition, and our understanding of the past is always colored by the present.
And for you, the listener, understanding these shifts is crucial.
Yeah.
It affects how you find information, how you engage with culture, and how you make sense of the world in this increasingly digital age.